How you doing, guys, and welcome to my episode 5 review of the Derek Jeter documentary, The Captain, on ESPN, ESPN Plus. So this episode started off with the great prologue of presenting the media relationship with Derek Jeter. Like, Derek Jeter came from a fishbowl. He was Rookie of the Year, won World Series in '96, become an absolute star right off the bat. Then it detailed that story later in this episode. But first 15 minutes were just, it pissed me off. It pissed me off as a Yankee fan because this episode, the first 15 minutes, presented the historic Yankees collapsing crime of the century, the 2004 ALCS. If you know what I'm talking about, Boston against the Boston Red Sox. Fenway faithfuls, y'all know the story. And this was so infuriating. It was like, oh, I like to use that word, but it was like that because the Yankees won first 2 games. Game 3 completely annihilated the Red Sox. Then Jeter was said like, hey, we got this. We up by this much in the series. We got this, right? Then Game 4, Dave Roberts steal. Even Jeter was like, couldn't tag it. Then hated talking about it. Then in this series, Joe Torre had the worst managerial job in terms of in the playoff series. And after Game 4 of home run in the early innings, Alex Rodriguez stopped hitting. He stopped hitting. He became a failure in this series. Then later on, his postseason has been a demon on his side. Of course, including that swat on Boston Royal in Game 6, on and on and on. But for me, in terms of what infuriated me the first 15 minutes was why in Game 5? What happened in Game 5? Because in Game 4, okay, you lose. Red Sox had their moment. Okay, move on from it. But in Game 5, down 2-1, Derek Jeter hits a bases clearing triple of Pedro Martinez to take the lead. Then later on, they had a chance to add a run. Runner on second base. Derek Jeter at the plate. Then Joe Torre, for some reason, ordered Jeter to bunt. Why? Jeter's one of the best postseason performers in your franchise. The next batter, A-Rod, strikes out. What if Jeter didn't bunt and just hit away, swing away? Maybe gets a base hit, drives in a run, 5-2 lead. Then who knows what A-Rod's done the next at-bat. Maybe it's a home run or something. Boom, it's 7-2. And it's over, right? Then they lost the series. I mean, I couldn't want to talk about it. I couldn't want to careless about the series. Then that's where Derek Jeter brought about pressure. Pressure of being handled, the big moments. The pressure started to get into them. And that's where you see the difference between the late 90s Yankees dynasty team versus the post-late 90s Yankees dynasty teams in terms of pressure. The late 90s Yankees dynasty team, to be able to pull off 4 championships in 5 years, because they have players who gel, who have great chemistry, who pull for each other, who care about the team winning more than individual, versus the post-late 90s Yankees dynasty team, where they brought these whole high-price imported players, mercenaries, like not much great of experienced player, even they're great ball players. And that's how the Yankees, in terms of like postseason failures after 04, shown. And at the end, where Bernie Williams said it was a more embarrassing way to end the series, it was very embarrassing to lose a series that way. And there's no way around it. Like, Jeter felt misery, sick to his stomach. Jorge Posada couldn't sleep. Going over my head, in quote, looking over the tape, and even timed on the Dave Roberts steal. It's all the way around. But in that whole sequence, I thought Joel Sermon described and detailed perfectly. I thought he did a fine job, like, detailing that portion of the episode. This was infuriating. The first 15 was infuriating. Then move on to, it was the aftermath of that series, the media coverage. A lot of media personnel, interviewees appeared on this episode, like Michael Kay, Scott Rabb, Kim Jones, Joel Sherman, Mike Feinstein, Buster Olney, Mark Craig, Tom Verducci, even Eli Manning appeared. And I love the Eli Manning appearance more because, like, Eli is scrutinized from a lot of New York Giants fans. Because, oh, Eli's not better than Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger. Oh, Eli's a drag. He doesn't make the other team better. He's not like, Tom Brady, on and on and on. So I love Eli's appearance just because Eli was scrutinized. He was in a gunpoint from a lot of fan base, and I love Eli's appearance. Like, Sweeney Murray appeared. I like Darryl Strawberry, who appeared in this episode. Like, describing Derek Jeter, Derek didn't truly accept it, A-Rod. That's why, like, we're whole Derek Jeter, Alex Rodriguez dynamics, like, never been great. And they show the highlights of, like, the botched pop-off fly where A-Rod and Jeter kind of bump into each other and drop the ball right in front of him. It's like Jeter was like, "What the hell are you doing? What the hell you think you are? What the hell are you doing?" Then Jeter said on this episode, media in New York is a bitch, not easy, volume of reporters, like 30, 40 reporters try to have a good relationship, which Jeter tried to attempt and tried to have. And Jeter then tried to make their job difficult. He tried to make his job easier. That's how Jeter was surviving in order to, get over those like scrutiny of media attention, because he was in the media center of attention. He was the guy. He was the franchise player. And Jeter's number one focus was winning, team winning on the field. Jeter could care less about what's happening outside of the playing field, off the baseball diamond. He could care less about it. His bottom line was team winning. That's it. And even I like, not just in this part of this episode, where it's the media coverage, media was trying to get the story from Derek Jeter, and Derek Jeter didn't give it to him. Also, I like they presented where media was like, among newspapers, they were trying to battle for the bigger story, the better back page of the newspaper, because I saw the consumers, the fans, the people buy their newspapers, going, at the newsstands and supermarkets, on and on and on. So then the next portion was like the whole racial issue topic of conversation, which I was so uncomfortable listening to. It's very, very complicated. It's very, very it's not my topic to discuss or talk about it, so I didn't like it. But one guy that came across as such a bad guy is Wallace Matthews. Wallace Matthews, in this episode, he described Jeter as colorless. It was like, what? What does that mean, Jeter being colorless? And once that happens, Jeter was like, what the hell? Who the f*** you? He said that. And Jeter's family was so infuriated. It's like, you can't say that. Once you say that, we will cut you off. We will destroy you to the no end. And Wallace Matthews was so bad in this episode. And even later on, where it's Gary Sheffield interviews, like, Joe Torre treated, black ball players differently, and why he compliments Jeter, saying Derek Jeter, on and on. And then Derek Jeter was like, why am I into this conversation? Why am I involved into this? And Jeter, those kind of stuff, he treated as distraction, unnecessary distraction, because his job was the team winning, on field stuff. That's all he cared about it. In that portion of the part, they talk about the real world versus the baseball field, or in terms of in this day and age, you could describe as a sports world. In this current days of sports, where they talk about social justice, a lot of NBA players are vocal about, social changes, injustice, on and on and on. They're vocal. But on that particular time, where the only source of media coverage was the newspaper was the main source. Right now it's social media with Twitters, Instagram, Facebook, on and on and on, phones and everything. And that type of the year where it's real world, where it's social justice, a shooting, controversial stuff, world topics, versus the like the playing field, the candy store, the sports topics, the sports things, games, on and on and on. So that's where the ball players, they didn't even talk about it, because if you talk about it, then you bring in unnecessary attention to it. So they cover that portion of the story, and probably the funniest part on this episode, because there's not much funny part in this episode, and this was the whole gift basket myth that Jeter talked about when he's running Starbucks. Like, oh, this guy's, oh, give me this guy's, are you it? Then he responded that. I thought that part was so funny. It was like, even that gift basket myth or story, Jeter continues to deny it, or true or not. I thought that part was so funny. And Jeter, I like, he's so protected of his family, friend, anything. He's a very guarded person now. He's a very, very guarded individual. And at the end, where they talk about the moving on from Joe Torre as a manager, then Jeter compliments him as a second father. He admires Joe Torre, what is it about? You very respect him. Then Jeter's being overrated. This topic was mentioned and came across, and his decline defensively as a shortstop. Then a lot of the Yankee brass afraid to confront Jeter. Then it moves on to, before it ends, the whole Derek Jeter versus Brian Cashman. Cashman ordered Derek to get a new trainer, new workouts, change your training style, etc., etc. And you can tell Derek hates Cashman. He couldn't stand Cashman. He was like, who the hell you think you are? Then overall, this was more than infuriating enough to me in this episode that I couldn't take what about, because the whole 04 stuff, then all the media coverage, or this racial topic of conversation, the end of Joe Torre and Jeter being overrated, his decline as shortstop, him against Cashman, like a lot of like bullet points of infuriating like topics appear on this episode that really jumped the gun on me. And hopefully the next episode is more happier in terms of like story and Derek Jeter's documentation of his career. So there you have it. That's my episode 5 of the Derek Jeter documentary review, The Captain. What do you think about it? Leave your thoughts. Stay tuned for the next video, which is the episode 6 of the Captain review. So stay tuned. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.